Hello viewers, CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. We've all been reading about this in the newspapers all through August 1996. It has also figured in news bulletins on the radio and the television. Ever since the debate became the focus of attention, so did India. The Western press has tried to paint out as if India is a villain of the peace, as if it is the main obstacle in ushering in a nuclear-free era. India, on the other hand, has categorically asserted that it was all for nuclear disarmament, but it would not be a party to a discriminatory treaty and hence refused to sign. CTBT has therefore several allied issues to it. To unravel some of them, we have with us in the studio today Dr. Shrikant Paranspe, Reader, Department of Defence and Strategic Studies, University of Pune. Dr. Paranspe, welcome to you to the studio.
Thank you.
At the outset, could you explain to us what have been the important landmarks in the CTBT debate? When did it start and where is it at now?
I think when we start issues or when we start discussion about the CTBT in terms of landmarks, there could probably be two specific frameworks within which one can look at it. One would be a framework of arms control and disarmament at a conceptual level, and trying to find out that within that framework of arms control and disarmament, what issues have been discussed in terms of trying to make the world a safer place to live. This, in that sense, is a humanitarian dimension of the entire thrust of arms control and disarmament. The other is a framework within which one would look at a variety of treaties, negotiations, decisions taken over a period of time, and how, for example, has India participated in these. It can be principled commitments, it can be stands, it can be projections, or it can be actually treaties which have been signed. What I would really say is that if you go back into the 1950s, concern about nuclear testing, concern about conducting tests for nuclear weapons was sought to be projected in a very systematic manner by India. Prime Minister Nehru called for a standstill agreement way back in 1954. The whole issue at that time focused on this concern that the world must be a safer place to live, nuclear weapons are dangerous, they are creating a hazard for the environment, tests which are being made should be stopped, and therefore, the proposal of the standstill agreement.
You mean India had asserted its position for quite some time ago?
Of course, India had asserted its position right from 1950s. In fact, some of the initial pronouncements which India made in the context of nuclear issues, these pronouncements have always been made in the context of using nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. And to harness nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, India has sought to have its own programs in that direction and told the world that what we should be looking for is not nuclear weapons, but the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. In that sense, the debate about CTBT, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, really begins in 1950s itself, at least at a conceptual level. One has to start thinking about comprehensive ban on tests since then, since that is the point when India really articulated this position for the first time in the United Nations. If you start from there, from 1950s, the automatic next milestone that one really looks at is a partial test ban treaty, which came in 1963.
Why was it called partial?
Partial because it is not a comprehensive one as it is imagined now. Partial because it selectively banned some kinds of nuclear tests in the atmosphere, above the ground. It did not ban nuclear tests which were conducted underground. For example, India conducted a peaceful nuclear explosion at Pokhran in 1974, which was an underground implosion. These kinds of tests were not banned by the partial test ban treaty, but it was definitely a step forward in the sense that now we were being concerned about problems of nuclear tests which were being conducted in the atmosphere and the radiation effects which these tests would have. In that sense, that is one step further. A second step in a big way comes with the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Good. I was going to ask you to distinguish for us between the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the CTBT. What is the difference and where is the overlap?
You see, in a sense, if you put it theoretically, NPT and the CTBT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, have the same aims. Both are trying to create a world which is eventually likely to be free of nuclear weapons, eventually likely to be a more peaceful world minus the nuclear weapons or the weapons of destruction. NPT, however, sought to create a situation where those countries which did not have nuclear weapons, they be banned from producing nuclear weapons. NPT almost created a kind of a cutoff date, that it classified countries into those having nuclear weapons and those not having nuclear weapons. It prohibited countries, those who were not having nuclear weapons, from producing nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, NPT had no specific agenda as regards the vertical proliferation problems, that is, as regards those countries having nuclear weapons, the ceiling or the limitations on those countries.
Would I be right if I said then the NPT therefore is something like the haves and the have not? The haves keep on saying we will keep on having, but the have nots are not allowed to join the group.
Very much. In fact, that is why NPT is called a discriminatory treaty. That is why India refused to sign the NPT. But let me add here, even at the time of the discussions of the NPT, which went on through the 1960s, mid 1960s, and India was an active participant in that discussion, you find during those discussions issues about CTBT being raised. The idea was not to stop at NPT. The idea was not to simply say that no further countries to be nuclear weapon powers. The idea was eventually to progress towards a point where you do have a total ban, you do have a total commitment. Unfortunately, when the final draft of the NPT came in, that final draft apparently lost sight of this basic principled commitment that eventually everybody has to give up their nuclear weapons. That is the discriminatory part of it, which is why India did not sign the NPT in 1968, and when it came into force in 1970, India was not a member of the NPT. That becomes a major landmark, so to say. Again, India did conduct a test in 1974, but at the same time one must remember that India was the only country to conduct a PNE first, that is a peaceful nuclear explosion first. All other weapon powers who have accepted the logic of PNE, who have accepted that you can have a peaceful nuclear test as part of your scientific R&D, have been weapon powers first and have gone into peaceful research later on.
Well, that is an important difference.
Here you have India as the only power who has conducted a PNE for peaceful purposes, who has not conducted another test as yet, who has not gone into a weapons option. In that sense, Indian stand of 1950s, Indian stand of 1960s, there is a consistency in that.
Right, till now.
Till now, and that is where you come to the debates about the CTBT in essence.
Just let's look at something interesting that has been happening in France and China have both, correct me, conducted 3 nuclear tests each over the last 12 months or so, and yet both of them are coming forward as signatories to the CTBT. Now, isn't this some kind of a contradictory stand?
In fact, they have conducted more tests, but the number perhaps is not significant as the fact that tests were conducted. What is more significant is tests were conducted when the negotiations of the CTBT are in progress. In fact, the last test which the Chinese conducted was very much at a point when the discussions were in the last stages. Now, look at these tests. In fact, let me add something there in the context of these tests. CTBT, one of the issues of controversy in CTBT was to permit some kinds of tests and not permit other kinds of tests. You see, for example, there is no disagreement on conducting tests for weapon purposes. There everybody agrees that this should not be there.
Okay.
But so far as peaceful nuclear explosions are concerned, the Chinese position had been that you must allow for peaceful nuclear explosions, and eventually the draft CTBT has put in some concessions to that, they have agreed to review the position about peaceful nuclear tests in due course of time as to whether to allow it in the future or not. But there are other tests which are sometimes called passive tests, other tests which could be computer simulated tests, which would be done to basically find out whether the weapons which you are using or which you already have are good enough in terms of their potency, to probably conduct further tests in the laboratory to find out new kinds of weapon systems. Even these tests theoretically should come under the comprehensive ban, and that is in fact an issue of controversy in terms of the comprehensive test ban treaty, where the Indian stand is banning all tests is all tests,
including the computer or simulated ones,
including the simulated ones, including those passive, so called passive nuclear tests. All these should be banned. Only then the concept makes really sense. But the point is well taken that France and China did conduct tests, and now to say that henceforth we might not conduct, the questions of credibility are likely to be raised.
Is it like putting a convenient date for yourself and then getting all your work done and then stopping everybody else?
It is something like that, but you see, that is one of the controversies. The other controversies was also about entry into force. There was one more controversy about how do you check up whether tests have been conducted or not, international inspection facilities. There also there were disagreements, whether you have international inspection facilities or whether you have bilateral facilities or American satellites would be enough. These controversies remain, and especially if you look at the way in which the CTBT has been going into negotiations. Since the time NPT was finalized in 1995 as a permanent feature, you see, earlier NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, was a time bound treaty which had to be reviewed. The last review conference, which took place in 1995, has created NPT as a permanent treaty, which really altered Indian posture regarding CTBT, which really has changed the entire perspective about CTBT, which created problems of credibility in the context of Chinese and French tests, which has opened up an entirely new dimension altogether about this debate. Because
how does making NPT permanent affect directly the CTBT and its implications?
Let me put it this way. Indian stand at the point of NPT basically had been that you must commit yourself to nuclear disarmament in the eventual future. 1960s India had not used the word timetable for nuclear disarmament. Perhaps India had presumed that had you given a kind of a unilateral principled declaration that in due course we would denuclearize, the nuclear weapon powers would definitely eventually shed their nuclear weapons. 1995, when NPT was confirmed as a permanent feature, this Indian concern remained unanswered, and now the option to India really was that if it could not take place in 1995, then you had to fight at the level of the CTBT. What India could have achieved maybe in 60s, what India could have achieved in 1995 when the NPT was being reviewed, now the entire focus is on the CTBT, that now at least you must now come out with not a principled declaration alone, now you must come out with a timetable. That goal of CTBT is now being articulated in clear cut terms by India.
Well, India's envoys have always maintained that we have been consistent in our position taking. We are definitely for a peaceful world, peaceful coexistence, and for nuclear disarmament. Would it be right therefore to say that India, by taking the posture it did about the current CTBT, had really voiced the position and the grievances of several other nations vis-a-vis what seems to be discrimination in a vertical versus a horizontal?
Oh yes. In fact, when India
treaty positions,
when India started to really articulate its position in a very clear cut manner. In fact, I would add that one of the accusations against India earlier had been that India was being vague rather than being specific. Now, at the point of CTBT discussions, India was very specific in terms of its objections. It was very specific in terms of its demands that nuclear weapon powers also have a commitment to nuclear disarmament.
These have been put on the record.
On record, okay. Not once but a number of times. Once these positions were taken by India, when this specific position was taken by India, you do find that a number of countries who would have probably wanted a number of issues to be included in the CTBT, controversial areas, as PNE was one controversial area, your peaceful nuclear test was one controversial area, inspection sites was another, or test sites was another, inspection methods and methodologies was another, entry into force as to when the when does the treaty enter into force, that was another controversy. All these suddenly became issues which could be really hidden behind the Indian position, that if India is going to object and you do have problems of this treaty being passed, it is good enough for us, because automatically this treaty might not get through in its present position. And you do find accusations being labelled against a number of countries that instead of taking an open posture, they are now taking a posture which would be good enough. Apparently they might support the treaty, but in essence they might have a position which is almost similar to Indian.
India's.
There also I would like to add one thing which is a little slightly different, but in this context, if you look at Soviet policy under Gorbachev, the New Delhi declaration made by Gorbachev and Rajiv Gandhi focuses on these issues in a different way, but focuses on these issues in terms of Soviet Union taking up the commitment of nuclear disarmament also. So, that was the first time when a nuclear weapons power accepted that nuclear weapon free world is not simply a matter of concern of the non-nuclear powers, it is also a matter of concern of the nuclear weapon powers. So, if you stretch that line further, Indian argument is basically that, and that is the consistent part of Indian stand. India has not deviated from peaceful nuclear purposes.
So that even the nuclear, so just allied question, since we are on this question of countries, there is a term like the P5 and P8, and this distinguishes which countries belong to which group.
That is something which is being discussed so many.
Just to clarify what.
The P5 are the 5 nuclear weapon powers: the United States, Great Britain, France, Soviet Russia earlier, now Russia, China. The P8 category includes 3 other countries besides the nuclear weapon powers, that is Israel, Pakistan and India. These 3 are to be considered as nuclear weapon capable powers, but they do not actually possess nuclear weapons. You see, in fact, the definitions about nuclear capability, which were very clear cut in 68 in the NPT context, almost kind of black and white definitions, either you are a nuclear weapon power or you are not, changed in 1974 when India conducted a test, demonstrated its capability, but did not take a weapons option. 1974, these definitions now, instead of having black and white, you have grey areas, probably or more grey or less grey.
That's like a watershed year.
Almost like a watershed year. And now these countries having the capability to produce nuclear weapons, but not actually possessing nuclear weapons, are these threshold powers. They with the P5 constitute the P8.
Right.
That is the terminology which is being used in the.
And it would be right to say that in the years to come, there could be a few other countries which join this threshold group too?
Sure. Threshold group basically would mean what? You must have the necessary raw material to produce a nuclear weapon, plutonium or highly enriched uranium. You must have the scientific, technological manpower or the skills, and you must have sufficient amount of capabilities to do all that together. So, if you have that, capabilities are assured. It is only a matter of intent.
You put it to is a different
Precisely,
question.
it is only a matter of intent. Whether you want to translate those capabilities into weapons policies, that is where the intent comes in.
Now, focusing again on the current the Geneva conference leading to the signing of the CTBT. India not only did not sign, it took a position of a veto. It used a veto. Now, I understand there is a difference between just not signing, which is what some of the Western powers wanted India to do, and India is actually going ahead with a veto. What exactly is the difference?
Let me not go into legalities, but the difference basically is this, that if India does not simply sign the treaty and allows the draft to go as it is, that draft would have eventually emerged as a final declaration of the CTBT and come into a treaty form. In due course, India would have been forced to accept that as a draft. The basic method of negotiations for the CTBT in the Conference for Disarmament is a method which is based on consensus. So, unless everybody accepts that, it is like saying everybody has a veto, which is what India really used. that we do not accept this draft, and that is where we take a position that this draft will not go through. Now, what is permitted is that somebody can raise it as a resolution in the United Nations and perhaps get it passed as a resolution, which would go by majority, not by consensus.
But that is not technically the same as being signatories.
That is not technically the same. That is not as binding as it would have been had the draft been accepted by consensus and unanimity by the Conference on Disarmament at Geneva. Then the treaty becomes binding.
So, India has introduced really by using a veto a very important insistence, shall we say, that the conditions that it has been making should be listened to and paid attention to by the nuclear powers before other nations can be expected to sign on the dotted line.
Sure, it is almost like saying that in the context of the NPT, India was not listened to. Now, it is a point has come now that India is going to force the other countries to listen to it and ensure that its position is now taken note of. Rationale
it's
would
almost
be
like a reversal of a position.
It is not
to bring in some important points which the countries possessing the nuclear powers have to now therefore now abide by certain conditions before it can make an impression that what they are saying is really applicable to all.
It is almost calling the bluff. What you are saying is that it is almost calling the bluff, that if you are really serious about nuclear disarmament, you also have to make a commitment. In fact, you have to make a commitment in priority, because you are the ones who are having nuclear weapons. We are not the priority cases. We can say that we will not produce nuclear weapons. We are not producing nuclear weapons as of now. The difference basically is in 1960s, India did not have the capability to stress this option. 1990s, India has the capability, a demonstrated capability of 1974 PNE to stress this option and say that now we will really call the bluff. Okay. That it amounts to that basically.
One last question. While getting embroiled in the nuclear debate, shouldn't one also keep in mind that this whole question of the world as it is, that there is a certain politics operating, and often the nuclear question and the positions taken is only an extension of a general political division of the world. Would you like to speak a little bit about this in the post-Cold War scenario?
In a sense, yes. Post-Cold War scenario, things have changed a little more dramatically than what they were earlier. In the post-Cold War scenario, you do have a situation where you have United States as a major actor in the world, at least at a security level. You have a situation where at an economic level there are more than one or two powers. You have a European Union, you have Germany, you have Japan, you have United States. You have a situation where economic issues are likely to gain more clout, and these factors would be counting so far as decision making is concerned. Methods of putting pressure are now perhaps more economic than political or military, and given these changes of post-Cold War period, India would have to articulate its position more specifically, take a more concrete position than being vague, and that is what is really being seen. Politics is different in the post-Cold War period, yes, and articulating positions, the method of negotiations has changed, and I think India is doing a very noteworthy job in articulating its position at the CTBT discussions just now.
Right. So, the nuclear question has to be really seen in a world scenario, a de facto world with its own position and lobbying. Over today's discussion, I am sure we are all a little more better informed about the questions lying beneath the surface of the CTBT, often not known to us here when the debate is going on far away, but very crucial questions for the world at large, especially those who are not part of the charmed circle of the nuclear powers. I would like to take this occasion, Dr. Paranjpe, to thank you for coming into our studio today and enlightening us on several factors. I am sure our viewers share our applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers. Goodbye.